It's another episode of the Next Fix podcast, and we've got my new friend Andrew coming to us as the founder of the CCRI Project. And so he's been hard at work just getting his message and his cause, his mission out there. And there's nothing I can appreciate more than that. But Andrew, before we dig in and really figure out your recovery journey and what that has looked like, I want you to introduce yourself, man. Let everybody know who you are and kind of what you're about. First of all, just tell us about the CCRI project, but just high level.
High level. All right. Thanks for having me on, Ryan. It's nice to get acquainted with you. My name is Andrew, and I do have a recovery journey, and I've been through a lot of things, a lot of situations, a lot of experiences that have brought me to this present moment. And I'm somebody who likes to think outside the box, look deep into the nitty gritty of things, right? Really ask questions, right? And don't just blindly follow or passively participate in whatever is going on.
So, this type of work, right? The type of things, or this subject matter doesn't typically happen by accident. There's a genesis or a catalyst
Yeah.
moment,
Yeah.
and so that's usually, from my experience, is rock bottom, right? So, what did that experience look like for you, brother? Like, when did you start realizing that maybe you had some issues, and maybe things weren't so great for you?
Yeah, well, I'll start off by saying throughout my experiences using substances and the lifestyle, street etiquette, it was a way for me to find meaning and purpose and some sort of direction in my life where that was absent or ambivalent, right? I wasn't really sure of how my life was going to go. I was a smart kid in school, had decent grades, but I didn't really apply myself as much as I probably should have. But that being said, engaging myself into this sort of lifestyle and this different crowd provided me with that sense of meaning, right, and connection, and which I think everyone alive really is really searching for a purpose and meaning, right? In some shape, way, or form. And based on the available
So,
information and
well,
resources.
hey, Andrew, let me and forgive me, brother, and I hop in when I have a thought, and I'm like a small child in the middle of a movie, right? So, y- you you were doing, you began kind of using and partying or whatever it was that involved substances. You started because you felt closer with people like others. That was like kind of the initial high, or that was like the good part of it. You felt closer to others, and that was kind of where it all started.
Yeah, well, there's other aspects too. There was the family dynamics, the household, right? So there was a lot of tension, a lot of angst, a lot of short tempered, a lot of anger that I observed growing up. And so part of that also was to escape that environment and try to get away from everything to kind of protect my own peace to the best way that I knew how.
Okay. Yeah, that's see, like, I find or I've noticed that there's usually, there's like an element of escape too. It's usually like a two-pronged kind of an appeal, right? It's appealing because there is like the fun side of using drugs and party, but then there's like typically some other type, and that's where I think everybody's always trauma is such a hot topic word. But so you did have an element of escape from the home life, is what you're saying.
Yeah, correct. And it wasn't my the family, it wasn't my parents' fault, right? They're just going about how they feel they should go because there's no manual to life. There's no, you know, instructions how to raise a child or any of that. And based on their previous experience, their how they were brought up, right? That kind of transfers over to the child, to me. And I myself, not knowing
Yeah.
anything about anything, just went along with the circus.
Right. Now, so are you saying that they used, or you're saying
Well,
that they
no,
also like
They didn't use to the extent that I did, right? They weren't
Oh,
really in that lifestyle. I mean, my father drank, right, a couple beers here and there, but he wasn't. I wouldn't consider him an alcoholic, right? My mother had her time. Like she
right.
partied as a teenager. She was a bar hopper, but that never turned into anything drastic or detrimental.
Sure. Sure, sure, sure. Right on. And so yeah, and so but that was a part of it was escaping that element and, and man, God bless you for having so much grace towards them. It seems like you've done a lot of work to, to be, at a place where you're kind about and, forgiving because you're right. And we don't nobody really knows how to do any of this. So
Yeah, yeah.
it's
I
it's
didn't come to
important, right?
realization when I was younger. I developed sort of like emotional divestments, resentments, some anger, some pent up hatred, and I expressed that as an act of rebellion. Right. My father was very this is my house. Live by my rules. In here is my house. Outside is America. It was that kind of upbringing.
Wow. When you say outside of America, like how do you mean?
Like the outside is like the United States, but within the household, he's king. Yeah,
Right. Okay,
yeah,
okay, okay. And that kinda made you wanted to rebel against that kind of that
yeah,
kinda authority?
yeah. And I was beginning to develop
Sure.
my own sense of autonomy, right, which is something I value still today, and encourage everyone to cultivate that own sense within themselves.
Yeah. Well, that's awesome for sure. And so where how did it start to develop as you were, like, finding this connection outside of the home and then also kind of, wanting to be outside of the home? You're like, "Ah, I kinda like it outside of your kingdom." Right? So how did that all start coming about?
Well, of course, it's not necessarily what you know, but it's who you know too, right? So you meet one person and then they know somebody, and then you get introduced, and then there's this whole network of activity, right? And I lived for that activity, right? I became infatuated with it. I fell in love with drug culture, the underbelly of society. That was appealing to me. That was meaningful to me, and it was a way to establish myself in the world.
That's yeah, I say I call it alleyway commerce.
Mm,
I get high off of being in those circumstances, like, I love it, like, it's shady, and I kinda feel like I get, like, a rush, I'm like, "Oh, man, yeah, yeah," I like and so I wanna know, like, how did that develop for you? Because now you're saying that it's like, "Okay, yeah, I'm kinda into this," and then seems like, you're headed down a path that involves, you being a dead center in the middle of this scene.
yeah. So as things progressed, right, as I entrenched myself even further, I dug deeper, right? The roots were spread in that soil, in that seedy soil, if you will. And
Right.
there was a lot of chaos, a lot of sharpness. It was very tactical, and I loved it. But there was also I started to think like, hey, am I going to do this for the rest of my life? Right? It is what's next for me, right? Do I want to become like this kingpin drug lord, or actually do something productive with my life, right? And as time went on, consequences started to pile up, right? So at first, the consequences were minimal, right? Nothing really to pay much attention to. But then I started missing out on family events, right? I was never home. I was missing appointments. I became unemployable. And then I started
Mm.
to get arrested, right? I started to begin this record of criminal activity. And then from one point where I was getting arrested to the next, that time span was shrinking, right? So I was becoming more frequent, more often, and I was
Right, right.
getting more caught up with charges. And
So you're getting arrested more frequently, and is that predominantly what you're doing? You're selling drugs? If so, like, what were the drugs? Like, what were you was it just weed? What were you getting into? What did that
Well, at first,
What was that specifically for you? Like,
it started off with marijuana, right? And like after high school, right? I had this little crew of friends. We all sold bud. Everyone, bud was okay. It was still illegal at that time, but it wasn't like the cops didn't care about weed so much, right? They would ask us like, "Do you know anything about anything else?" Right? And at that time, right, we weren't really acquainted with that kind of deeper level, higher level of that environment. And then there was this split between my friends who just kind of stuck with like weed and like acid and drinking and all that stuff, right? And I kind of diverged into a more seedier level, right? More kind of like higher up,
yeah, okay.
graduating, from one substance to another. And then there was, it came with the cocaine, right? And then the heroin. And then the cocaine turned to crack. And then the heroin turned to fentanyl. And then just a whole lot of consequences that came with that.
Now, were you using all of these? Like, were you doing all of it? Or, I mean, it
Oh,
seems like you're
absolutely.
on more of the professional drug side of things. So like, what was your personal like use looking like these days? Were you doing all of it?
No, not all of it. So I started to make this balance between keeping up with the habits and still being able to provide the community with a service, with a pharmaceutical service, right? And then uh,
Right.
yeah, it came to the point where I would just only break even, right? And then where it became where I'm like out, and I started owing people money, and then had to do other things to make that up. But then that entailed further criminal behavior like boosting, robbing people, ripping them off, and it's and deep down I knew like I didn't want to do this. Like I know like this is not me, but the circumstances
Can
propelled
can
me.
you can you share what is boosting?
Was when
I
you
actually don't know.
well, I'm glad I could inform you. Boosting is when you go into a supermarket intending to fill an entire shopping cart full of whatever may be needed or requested, and then walk out.
Oh, so it's like, wow,
Shoplift.
okay, so but it's not just stealing random things, like, like, somebody tells you, "I want all this stuff," and you're like, "Yeah, I'll go in there and I'll get all of it?" Like, almost like a one of those
Right.
shopping services, but you just
Yeah.
never paid?
Yeah.
Wow. That's crazy. Like, you got, like, the app, you're, like, going through, you're like, "Okay, toilet paper, okay," and then, like, and
Diapers.
then you just hit the road.
Some.
Wow, wow. And so now like right, and so now, like, maybe on a scale of 1 to 10, and you being familiar with, like, addiction and everything, like, how bad was it when you started, like, having to, like, do these other types of activities, including theft, to, like, keep up with, like, your use? Like, were you maxed out, like, you're a straight stone cold addict and you were just strung out, or were you, like, kinda functional in a way? And I know that sounds like a crazy question because you're stealing stuff to get drugs, but, like, I know that, that maybe you were still kinda with it at this point.
Yeah, at the beginning, right? So at the beginning of that phase, right, it was still functional, right? And for myself, I believed I was functional. I was still clear minded, right? But then the more you get away with it, the more sloppier you become, and you get more comfortable, and then that's when you get caught. The more you come into a store, right, the more they see your face, and they're more like, "I watch out for this guy," and then the dominoes fall.
And so when those dominoes started falling, what did that look like for you?
It was like, "Dang, you got me. Good game." And there were some times where there was some close calls where I did escape, not with the merchandise, but with me. And there was other times where there was this one time there was this foot chase that I was on, right, and then I see this trooper pulls up across the street, and then I book it, right. I'm like use like all my energy, all my oomph. I left him in the dust, right. But here's what happened, right?
Right.
because of
Now,
that.
are you high? Are you high when this happens? Like, are you like,
Sometimes yes,
I mean,
sometimes not.
what were you high on too, right? Like,
It was you,
okay,
yeah, and so when I ran that burst of speed, right, my legs gave out and I just collapsed, and I'm like, all right, you got me. Yeah,
man.
yeah.
Yeah, I asked that question because I tried to catch a crackhead one time. And he blew me away to your point, like, I was like, "That guy is," and he was like a fat guy. I don't truly know if he was on crack, but my gosh, like, that dude left. I was like, "That dude's the fastest guy I've ever seen."
Yeah, the
He blew me
superpowers
away.
the superpowers are real.
Right, right. So this time though, like, your legs gave out, and then they're like, "Alright." And so how many times did you get arrested? How often were you landing in jail? Like, what did that how was it developing? How bad was it getting?
It was getting to like the frequency of it, right? So at first, right, they were like giving me like slaps on the wrists, right, and then community service, right, and then it got to the point where I decided I'm not going to boost anymore. I'm still gonna sell drugs. I'm still gonna do this, but I'm not gonna boost it anymore. Somebody else can go ahead and do it. And right, so I learned not to do that anymore because it became too exhausting the upkeep was too much. And
Sure,
yeah,
sure. So now you mentioned earlier that you were, like, foregoing appointments and family events. I guess, like, I'm imagining, and in my mind, I see this drug dealer, right? And you and so, you know, like, it did how bad was it getting? Like, does your family know that you're a drug dealer and all that?
yeah, they kind of figured out. They kind of put two and two together. Frequent. I was always going in and out of the house, and all the traffic on the road, and it became quite busy, and I had like my phone was going off like all the time, and there was just like no time for me. It became a full-time job
Right.
without any benefits.
Yeah, yeah. And so, in your own opinion, like, how where was it that it fell apart completely on you, like, this lifestyle?
It was the last time I got arrested, which was August 15th, 2023, and I had my pockets were loaded. They was loaded, right?
Yeah,
And something told me like I was on foot too, right? And I could have ran, I could have through the whatever, right? But then something inside me like told me to like don't run, right? And my feet were kind of like glued to like the sidewalk, like I couldn't move, right? And then as soon as I seen him pull off, right, I can recall it distinctly, right? I look up to the sky and I'm like, because at that point I already knew like things had to change, right? And I'm like, I'm up to like looking at the sky, like, hey, God, if this is your will, this is your way, the only way for me to get out of this lifestyle, so be it. And so I took the charges. I was like at the station, cuffed to the
and
bench.
when you say when you say loaded, I wanna know, like, how loaded? Like, what are we talking about here? Like, I don't know. What was in those pockets?
I mean, it was all right. So it wasn't like a kilo or anything like that, but it was like over 10 grams of cocaine and like 6 bundles of those glassine bags.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Right, 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 right.
Yeah. So yeah.
Gotcha. Okay, and then so you just surrender. You're like, "Hey, look," and you have this moment with God, and, I'm curious, how was that going? Were you struggling and kind of asking, like, God to help you during all of this? Or were you how aware were you about, like, your spirituality? Was that a part of it?
Right. So at that time too, right, I had created developed this sense of spirituality, right? I got into the occult, right? I was interested in tarot cards, crystals, higher realms like the astral realm, and like the higher dimensional beings, the angels, and all that stuff. So I was really getting into that kind of stuff. And at that moment, I was prepared. Like there's this thing I say, right? I call it the biggest lie that I tell myself, and the biggest truth is that everything is going to be okay.
Hmm.
And it
Interesting.
it usually turns out okay. So I wasn't necessarily like worried what was going to happen at that point. I didn't really like care what was going to happen. I just knew like I had to surrender to a process and just move on. I'm gonna stick it. I'm gonna stick it out. I'm gonna turn out all right in the end. And I'm here
Yeah.
telling you about it.
All
So
right. So they yeah.
yeah,
So they book you, right? And
yeah.
then, how does it now you said that's the last time you got arrested. So, what changed, in your words, like what changed for you like that last time?
So I realized that the criminal behavior or the street culture is like it's not it, bro. This ain't it. And if I continue down this path, I'm either going to end up in a cell or dead, which actually almost occurred, more than several few many times.
Right, right.
Right.
And
And
so you get out of jail. I mean, what did you start doing different? Like how did you get clean?
so here's what went down, right? So I went a different route, right? So instead of jail or prison, right, they were gonna give me like 5.5 to 7 maximum, right, in prison, right? But yeah. So what they instead offered, they offered treatment court and go to a 30-day program, go to a rehab, be entered, become a participant of treatment court, and go to a halfway house.
And help me because I didn't go down that path specifically. But so you do a 30-day rehab, and then basically they observe you, and then you get a job and stuff like that. But were you like at this point were you into it? Like you had mentioned while they were arresting you, or like if this is your way, God,
Yeah.
like I'm
Mhm.
in, I'm down.
Right.
Now, were you willing and able? Like when you hit that rehab, did you like work the steps? How did it like stick for you?
So at that point, right? So at that time, so even though I surrendered to a process, right, I still had a resentment, right? There was this I'm still missing this last hurrah, this last because I was kind of forced into it, right? For better or worse, I'll use that terminology, and so I didn't want to get sober. Like I wanted things to get better, but I didn't want necessarily to stop using drugs. And so I had this resentment that was like burning within myself, right? And so the motivation to become willing and able was to kind of appease the powers that be and try to get them off my back, right? Get the eyes off of me. And so I did, jump feet first into the rooms. I got a sponsor. I did the steps. I did service. I was chairing like every week for like months for like different groups. I've had 2 home groups. I was taking people to the meetings. I was house president of my residential, and really put on this poster boy facade of recovery. And for a while, right? So that routine was good. That schedule, that structure was actually it was beneficial, right? But then I started to become
Yeah.
disillusioned with the process, right? Not so much the process of recovery, but this scripted path, right? This is the way you go. Like if you don't go to like 12-step meetings, if you don't have a sponsor, if you're not working the steps, you're gonna relapse, you're gonna do this, you're gonna do that, you're not really whatever. So I'm like, well, that doesn't sound right. That doesn't sound very spiritual. And so I
Sure.
started
So you started questioning. Okay, go ahead. Yeah, you started to question all of this, and I feel like this is where we're headed about the development of the CCRI, right? Is because you had questions, and you mentioned that earlier in the conversation, is that you like to ask questions, and you're the type of person who does. So I'm anxious to see how that, what came as a result of you thinking like maybe it isn't for you. Because I was the same way. I didn't think like I was like, I don't think this is exactly what I need. And so I
Yeah.
didn't go that route either.
Yeah, and so I will say like the value of my experience with my introduction to the rooms. I'm not going to deny that, right? It's a part of the story. It's part of my history, right? And I'm not going to devalue anybody else's experiences. That's not the point here. The point is to like I like to say a lot, recovery is it's dynamic, right? It's not static. And in fact, it can be for me, it's chiral, right? It cannot be superimposed upon anybody else's, right? So my path is my path, your path is your path. So if we have a common area, a common environment in which we can interact, that's great. And there's a saying in the rooms, right? They say, "Take what you need and leave the rest." And I will give credit to that too, because there's a lot of good things that these programs do for people. But for me, and like you, and everyone else like us, I wasn't really like I didn't feel connected to the rooms. I didn't feel like I belonged there. Like even though like we have like similar stories and experiences, it's just we just differ in perspective. And it's okay to have a difference of opinion, right? That's what makes life interesting and able to have a conversation, right? And so the more I went to these meetings, right, I kept hearing the same thing. They were repeating a lot of the slogans. They're or speaking sloganese, right? And I'm like, is this
Sloganese. Yeah, that's
yeah,
that's
yeah,
interesting. That's
yeah. And I'm like,
right.
is this really what true transformation looks like? Right? Because I've noticed a lot of people in the rooms who God bless them, by the way, but we're all still human. Right. And I started to notice that like programs like AA and NA or whatever ends up becoming another drug for these people because they become addicted to recovery or sobriety, and they treat that as their end all say all. And for them, that's if that works for them, God bless them, all the power to them. But for me, that I can't operate like that because I've worked the steps. I've had a sponsor. I've did all the service stuff, and I just something doesn't feel like I didn't feel like this was necessary for me to participate in. And the only reason was that I continued to be a part of that was because I developed, social bonds with some of the people, or a lot of the people in the rooms who I'm friends with today still. And that's a beautiful thing. So there wasn't no clear measure to track progress. And that's the same thing too with a lot of rehabs, right? And I also understand that these programs are meant to be maximally accessible to everybody, right? For scalability.
Sure.
That's one of the strengths, right? To, get you in the door and get the process started. But it felt like we were cattle in the rehabs, right? You get round us up at a certain times. You can smoke at this time. This is lunchtime. You have to go to this group. You have to do that. And I'm like, and I've noticed the thing about behavior, right? The thing is anyone can follow rules, right? Anyone can comply these programs and behave in a way that's performative. And on the outside, it looks like things are great. You're doing great. You got a solid foundation of recovery, but deep down inside, you're actually, I hate this place. You guys don't know what you're talking about. This isn't working. All that's kind of like inside. And I'm like, and I can say that because that's how I felt. And
Right.
right, yeah.
Yeah. It's go ahead.
Yeah, and there was this. It seemed very cookie cutter, right? As like a one size fits all approach, and I'm like, that's not it. And that's that. Recovery is unique to each and everybody, and especially for myself, right? So I figured that I could based off my experiences and like this bureaucratic administrative aura is very, I think, can be detrimental to actually cultivating growth within the individual instead of an outward appearance. And instead of like an ego dissolution, it becomes an ego transplant. You're just transferring your ego into a different role and into a different character.
So, yeah, you touch on spirituality a lot. And so I guess how did you find or what came as like, the result of that? I mean, and I was the same way. When I was in the rooms, I didn't do it wasn't my solution. And again, to your point, I support everybody. Whatever their solution is, do it, right? And if it is the rooms and it works for so many people. And so I'm curious as to, what did you develop, that really hit all of the marks for you? Like what was the answer?
Right. So I also want to establish some further context, right? So when I was also not just in the rooms and meetings, but the outpatient groups that I attended to, I felt the material was very stale, very boring, very basic, and there was just like the counselors or facilitators, they would just print out these worksheets that's from some other website. And like, here you go, we're gonna talk about this. And then I'm like, that's kind of cheap, right? You're kind of cheapening me out with my recovery, right? You're kind of cheaping everybody else out. And I don't even think, and I felt like I was like the only one who noticed that because I'm looking deeper into things. I'm looking like, how can this be further explained? How can this be compressed? How can this actually foster true, genuine transformation of the not only the individual but the soul? And so it was because
Right.
of those experiences, I started to get really, really disillusioned with the language of 12 steps of 12 step culture, right? Admitting you're powerless and that your life's become unmanageable. And that really, that powerlessness really kind of like made me question things, right? Because even in the 12 and 12, it says who admits to admit complete defeat, right? But at the same time, too, based on my research, my studying, my own reflections, and I bounced this off with a lot of other people too, and I found a lot of people felt the same way about this, even in the rooms too. It's just that nobody was having this conversation, and so I figured, why don't I start at least have the idea in my head of something that could be an answer, not the answer, but an answer, right? To the question
Right. Yes.
that people were having, that it wasn't just me.
Another solution. Right.
Yeah, and I think like with AA, people treat it like it's the way, right? But I say it's a way. It's not the way, but it's definitely a way. And for so long, like even, and I think it's not even AA's fault, right? Like the program wise, right? It's the culture that's been developed around it. Right. I would say that Bill W. and Dr. Bob, they would be turning in their graves right now if they found out, if they saw what was happening to their beloved creation. And I think it's this culture that's become calcified around it, that anything outside of it, anything that at least questions it is perceived, however overt or subtle, as a threat. And so you'll get a lot of side eyes, right? And I'll say something, and I won't even say it I'll say it in the most polite and respectful way, and I'll still get side eyes. I feel the tension in the room.
Right.
And I realized that like this is not the platform for it, right? This is not a place where we can have conversations and exchange of ideas and go back and forth. That's not the place for it. And I understand that. So and part of the reason why I started to develop something that could offer that. And not only could, has become a way for that people can. it's come a long way from from the CCRI project. It's come a long way from just an idea, right? And that idea turned into a couple essays, and then those couple essays turned into a book. And that book turned into a few books. And then those few books turned into an entire ecosystem of from whatever topic to from here to the moon, right? And all those, I've found a way to operationalize things and translate them in a way that can be always traced to not only recovery but life in general. Because for recovery to actually, be a thing, right? For is part of the life also, right? So for me, I don't call myself an alcoholic. I don't call myself an addict, right? I don't even say, I just say, "Hi, I'm Andrew," right? And then say my piece, right? And the whole identity thing, right? Like recovery cannot become an identity that's foundation is that's so rigid, right? So any idea that is not open to change will eventually, harden and eventually collapse, if not altogether, within, some of the people within it. And that's what happened with me. And I'm sure that happened with you as well.
Right. Right. And so now you mentioned an ecosystem. I mean, what is the CCRI like project? Now you said it's developed into something even more than that. I mean, what exactly is it? And how have you been helping people, to get that missing piece of their recovery?
All right. So the CCRI project stands for Consciousness Centered Recovery and Integration, right? And this was created to support individuals and communities in ways that support agency, that promote awareness, that are able to really find a way to actually make genuine change within their lives other than just following, a checklist, checking off boxes, because that's anyone can check off a box. But when the box is yourself, you're gonna have to think twice before you check it off.
Right.
Right. And so there are three central pillars to the CCRI project. Right. And the first pillar is consciousness, right? Which is awareness or presence. And is this sense of awareness. It is cultivating this awareness through reflection, through establishing perspective. And through that, we're able to improve our ability to notice patterns, notice our behaviors, and really get to know ourselves and really articulate a worldview that is able to interact with the world and how we interact with ourselves. And the second pillar is
Yeah.
recovery, right? So recovery is a process of wellness, right? It's an ongoing process and is through action, right? Measurable action. You don't have to do everything, all at once, like eat the elephant one bite at a time, right? And so through these practices and strategies, in order to kind of build that awareness further, it turns that awareness into action. It's a process of adjusting misalignment and correcting imbalance in our lives. It turns awareness into action.
That's awesome.
Right.
That is killer, man.
Yeah. And
So that's the second pillar is recovery. And yeah, okay, so go ahead. What's the third pillar?
the third pillar is integration, right? So it comes from the name itself, right? CCRI, right? Consciousness and recovery and integration. Those three pillars are from the name because everything throughout the whole entire project rests upon these three pillars. And integration is a process of approaching wholeness, right? It's approaching a way to become complete, right? It is the embodiment, right, of sustaining alignment over time. Right. So this is where we figure out how we can apply, not only apply, but be consistent in our application of the action that we did in recovery, right? Throughout recovery, it's building consistency and a sustainable life that does not require escape.
That's when I think about integration, I think about the community and our family and even like our work life. D is like a person gets to the 3rd, pillar, or they're now at that stage of their recovery. Do you help them to integrate back into their families and into their, the the workforce, and then also, like, into the community? Is that have you seen that people have, like, taken to that well?
That all can be part of that right there. So anything that you may think of that in life can be applied to these three pillars, right? So awareness, right? Say for example, right? I have a family, right? So I'm becoming aware of my behaviors and actions that may cause imbalance within the household, right? And then the recovery process comes in. Whereas I start to make the changes, right? I'm patient. I give, space for the other family to heal too, right? Because when we're healing, everybody else is healing as well because actions have consequences. And through the integration part, right? It is the sustaining. It's a synthesis of everything coming together in order to sustain that balance or homeostasis, right, but it can also be applied to a far broader range of life aspects. So you could just regular normal behaviors, habits that we do every day, right? Like screen time, the food we eat, the music we listen to, right? What entertainment, what media are we consuming as well? And so all that really ties in together into this project, right? And when I say an
That's
ecosystem,
awesome.
right? There's also different branches of it too. Like I've crafted a workbook, right? It hasn't been published yet, but I've sent it to some few people to get some feedback, and so far I've gotten a lot of positive results. Right? And even just the
That's
ecosystem has
awesome.
expanded to a YouTube channel, an Instagram page, a Facebook page, and I've gotten comments from people saying like, "Hey, like when you wrote about this, this is what I struggle with. I could really relate to that. It's something I need to work on." And somebody else says like, "Hey, I'm really impressed with the work that you're doing. You're onto something," and that really tells me that I'm going in the right direction because I know that I believe that, right? But to hear somebody else say it too
Yeah.
really affirms my purpose and direction in order to not only help myself in the process but give people the opportunity to make changes with themselves as well.
I love it, man. I think that it's so common. I would say most people that start stacking some sobriety days together, there naturally is this desire to, like, help people that are in the position that we were in, and so I think that that is such a it's I wanna say noble, but maybe that's not the right word. It's because it's almost natural. I think that people that have been in that position of agony and despair and hopelessness, and then you start to get clarity, you start to see the light, you start to come out of it, and you're like, "Oh my gosh, I gotta help me, the way that I was." And there's plenty of people out there that were the way that you and I were. And so
Yeah.
I find it so impressive that you're putting this together in such a very, such an organized way. And yeah, you're nailing it, man, because you're putting it out there and people are telling you, do this, do that, and then listening to that feedback is gonna just fine tune, your efforts and your mission. It's amazing, man. It's amazing. And so, you mentioned that there's Facebook, and I'll put this all in black and white so everybody can just, click and find it. But I wanna know, like, is this a simultaneous process? Like, you're kind of putting this together in your own life and then, kind of sharing with other people? Like, is it you're developing it all at the same time? 'Cause I love that.
Yeah, everything is coming together. It's a synthesis of my lived experience,
Yeah,
right? And you mentioned people, wanting to help people and that's what really the recovery field is about necessarily, like especially with serpa work. So I actually am a certified recovery peer advocate. Well, I'm working towards it. I have my provisional, so I'm interning. I'm looking for other agencies, and I become a full-on serpa soon enough, and so I'll be able to really apply this and really get some field testing, right? Some feedback from it, more so than what I've already heard, right? So right now, the online presence that is, right, is very very small, right? So I only just started this, right? This isn't something that's been necessarily broadcasted over the development phase of it. But here and there, the conversations that I've had with other people who are also in recovery, I've used the material from that and try to engage the conversation and see that its effects on people. It's actually it's coming together. It's a beautiful thing.
I love it. Yeah, and you're right. It is a beautiful thing, brother. And so, yeah, man. Just real quickly though, just gotta give a shout out to everybody if they want to learn more about the CCRI project and about your story and your tools that you're developing. Where exactly should they go? Is it a website? Is it Instagram? What's the best place?
So I don't have a website yet, but I do have a Facebook page. It's called the Consciousness Centered Recovery and Integration Project. I'm on Instagram. It is the.ccri.project. And I have a YouTube channel, which is the CCRI Project. And so right now numbers are kind of low, but that's all great. That's all right because progress, right? It's the slow burn and really fortify the foundation that allows it to expand and grow and become something greater, which is the vision that I have for this. And
Yeah, love
yeah, there's a whole
you.
lot.
I noticed you quoted Nietzsche, right? And so
Yeah.
you have the why, and so therefore, the how will undoubtedly come together. So
Right, right.
it's an absolute blessing, man.
Yeah, yeah.
So
Another
good,
quote
man. Well,
that I love is by Carl Jung, right? Until you make the unconscious
that's
conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate.
right. Hey, that's it's wise words, man. And then so to your point, man, you're out here you've got boots on the ground doing the right thing, and that's impressive. And that part is noble. Right, that is the right word, and so I'm super excited that you are doing that work. And congratulations on the Serpal work and developing that element of it too. You're firing on all pistons, man, and that's an inspiration. And it's such a great thing. Well, this has been another episode of The Next Fix. Go see the CCRI project in all of its glory early, right? Before you
Early.
10 years from now, it's going to be the solution, right? And I'm excited for that day, brother.
The A
All right.
solution,
I'll
not
see
the
you on the next
solution.
one.
But yeah, great. It's been great having me. Thank you.